and we're very, very welcome and highly encouraged to join in with our comments and questions. Some sessions are quieter than others, so we hope this one will be a more lively one where we can join in with our comments. We can join in. So without further delay, I turn to Dr. Yamina to lead us in our fourth session of studying Surah 32 al-Sajdah. Jazakum.
Thank you, Isra. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. So this is our fourth week with Surah al-Sajdah, which means the prostration. And we stopped at ayah 4 last week. And we noticed that the subsequent ayat, the verses that come after from 5 onwards, up to 9, I think, they continue with the description of our Rabb. Our Rabb, your Rabb, it says, your sustainer is mentioned in ayah 3, and then in ayah 4, we are told that our Rabb is God, and then who God is being described to us. And in ayah 4, he's described the sustainer is God who has created the heavens and the earth and all that is between them in 6 aeons, and is established on the throne of his almightiness. You have no protector and no intercessor other than him. Will you then not pay heed? Will you not remember? أَفَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. Now we start, inshallah, with ayah 5, where we are told he governs the affair from heaven onto earth. Then it ascends unto him in a day whose measure is as 1,000 years of your reckoning. And in ayah 6, we are told, such is, so that God who creates, who does all this, is the knower of the unseen and the seen, the Almighty, the Merciful. And it carries on ayah 7 and 8 and 9, gives us an example of what ayah 5 is talking about. And the example is the creation of human being. So last week, when we reflected on ayah 4, if you remember, we saw how the throne, al-Arsh, is a metaphor for God's rule, for God being in control over all that exists. And we also talked about water being an example of what we are told in the Quran about water is that God's throne is on water. That's what we're told in the Quran. In Surah 11, ayah 7, we are told, and it is he, it's exactly the same as in ayah 4, and it is he who has created the heavens and the earth in 6 aeons. His throne has rested, and his throne has rested upon water. And then we are told God reminds you of your dependence on him in order to test you and thus to make manifest which of you is best in conduct. So what we talked about last week is how the creation is where the throne of God is manifested. And an example was water. In other words, the way things, when I say things, it means everything, beings, events, everything that's created, the way they come into being, the way they are interconnected and work harmoniously with each other, makes it clear to us, that's their way of testifying to us that they are the product of one single source. And therefore, there cannot be any partner with God. And that's how we understand that the throne, it means the control, the rule over everything, belongs to God alone, and to no one else and nothing else, as we are told in Surah Al-Isra in the Quran, in Surah 17, Ayah 42, we're told, if there were other gods than with God, with him, as some people claim, surely they would have found a way against the Lord of the throne. Surely we would have noticed that the throne does not belong to him only. So testifying that the throne belongs to God alone is important in attesting, making the testimony of Tawheed and the testimony of Shahada. So the throne is his because wherever we look, whatever we consider, but we have to consider them, because if we're just living like that, then we are not paying attention. We have to pay attention, as we are told in the Quran. Look, consider, think, reflect. When we do that, then we realize that everything that is in the creation points to one single source of power, as one source of governance, one source of administrating. They are being administered through the same law, the same laws, and that's tadbir. This administering, planning, regulating in Arabic is tadbir, and that's how the next ayah, which we want to reflect on today, inshallah, starts with يدبر الأمر من السماء إلى الأرض. And we'll start with the first part, and then we'll connect with the second part, inshallah. When we understand the first part, it becomes easier to connect. And if we can't connect, if with what we understand in the first part has no bearing to the second part, then personally, I stop and say, I'm missing something. Because if it is one unit, one ayah, one verse, then the beginning and the end must be related. If you have any question or comment, please go ahead. And as I told you before, I am not only saying what I think, what I understood from these verses, but how I'm trying to also share how I got that. We are not doing this as scholars. We are doing this as people who want to live with the Quran, to take it seriously, to take it at heart, as like the first companions, the Prophet ﷺ and his companion, the first community of Muslims did. They were not sitting, being academics or something of the Quran. Everyone was trying to understand as much as they can the Quran as God's guidance to us, something to live by day in, day out. So again, how did we confirm that indeed God is established on the throne in Ayah 3 and 4? By observing how everything is an ayah assigned to his rububiyyah. That's how we started the whole surah, with the Alif Lam Mim being ayat, being signs, and then pondering and reflecting on the meaning of what an ayah means. Now, once we observe that everything is an ayah, what does it mean that it is an ayah? It is an ayah to his administering. He is regulating everything. He is planning everything, to his tadbir. And how do we know that it is his tadbir? Because the way everything comes into being, it's through one law. The giving of life is given in a similar way to all mammals, and you can take it to insects and to everything else. So there is one law governing everything. So the source is one.
Dr. Yamina, could you unpack a bit more what's meant by one law of giving life?
But then we will not have time to.
Like
maybe you have something in mind. Maybe I didn't get your question.
Maybe I missed something. Like, all the mammals, or all animals or living beings being given life uh, under the same law of life. What does that mean? Are we talking about um, all of them having the same DNA language?
No, 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 no. I'm not talking about it in that. Inshallah, just all of us innately, everyone understand that something is being born, something is being given life. So the coming into life is similar, so that we recognize it. So I'm not talking about it in that whether it's DNA or not, or you on a daily level when we're looking outside, we're not in labs. That's how we see. For instance, it's when it's spring, all over the northern hemisphere, all the flowers, those that are outside and those that are inside, those that are inside, even though you think the temperature is constant, but somehow, because they are related to the sun and everything, all of them, it's spring. We say it's spring and they all opened up. But actually spring is the time of the opening. So there is an opening up of all flowers and all living things. They start being resurrected, as we are told in the Quran, given life again. And we recognize that, and it is similar. And in the beginning, we make a difference between, for instance, vegetation and eggs, like insects and birds and things. But after a while, you realize that yes, they are different, but there is a similarity. Like human beings, all human beings are very similar, yet each one is unique, and we can recognize them. So the uniqueness is there. At the same time, we recognize that they are all human beings. And even like animals, if you are, we recognize that they are living beings, that they are being born. So that's what I meant. So we recognize that they go through stages. They don't go through the same stages as human being, but we recognize that there are stages. They are being born somehow. So we recognize that their Rabb, the one who is sustaining them, bringing them into existence, they are coming from one, how do you say? They display similar features, like
They all have.
Imam Nursi, he says, like a stamp of, there is a stamp on them that you recognize that they're coming from the same source. Yes?
They all have a way of, eating something or being nurtured by something. They all.
They all need air,
Yeah.
even though vegetation, they don't breathe like we do, but we understand that, they need some nourishment.
Each creature has, each living being has a way that's nurtured. It eats that, or it sucks that, or breathes that.
But it's nourishment.
There is a nourishment for all of them, and there is a defense mechanism for all of them, even if it's a bacteria or a fish. And then there's a way to reproduce for all of them.
Yeah, and we call it, we have the names, the words, the terms we use are similar for different species, for instance.
Like reproduction. And then they all seem to come out of nowhere, and then eventually they go somewhere.
And then they disappear. We say they die, but they are not there anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
So there is like a similarity. That's tadbir. And in ayah 5, when we were reading and reflecting on 4, it took us through the different stages of the creation, and therefore tadbir. So when now we're ready to confirm the next ayah when it says يُدَبِّرُ الْأَمْرُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ الْأَرْضِ. He is the one who governs, who plans and regulates the affair from heavens onto earth. Now we are ready to accept this because Ayah 4 has already prepared us. Now we want to go a little more in its meaning. So let's focus on the first part of the Ayah. So as I said, yudabbir has the connotation of administering, planning, conducting, regulating, governing. So I said he governs, but you can use, I'm sure in different translations, they may have different words. And we can look at other parts of the Quran, which I usually do. And this is actually, it is a principle of usul al-tafsir. Don't let the terms like, usul tafsir just means methodology, method of how to approach tafsir, commentary on the Quran. And this is that the Quran explains itself. Of course, people realized this from the beginning, and then it became a principle. So you don't have to have studied usul tafsir to notice that, oh, I read this before in a passage in the Quran, now it's repeated. And each time it's repeated with some not, sometimes it's exactly the same words, but sometimes it's not exactly the same words, but the context is different, or from it approaches the same reality from a different perspective. And so each time we get, because we get a new perspective, we start getting an idea, an image of what's going on. If we are studying, of course, the Quran, not just reading and passing. And the words that are repeated exactly in the same way are there, it's a rahmah. It's like, because they are guiding us. That's a sign too, because we recognize it and you remember, this is a word that I already heard. Then you go there to the other part of the Quran and you find that it is explaining, they are explaining each other. When you read each one on its own, you don't get much. And when you read them together, the more you read them together and the more things start making sense. So it is a rahmah, it is a guidance, because God is speaking to us so that we understand. That's why he's making it in a way to facilitate the understanding for us. And last week we talked about things being created in stages. And so that makes it also easier for us, because there is an order. We can start reading the signs and start reading, seeing how they start reflecting the attributes of God for us. So it is, the creation is created to make sense for us, and the Quran is also sent in a way that makes following it and understanding it easier. So it's really beautiful, and it's a rahmah. So in this part, in another part of the Quran, and you will see how it shed lights on this issue. It's the first ayat of Surah Yunus. Surah Yunus is Surah 10. So I'll share with you ayah 1 to 6, and you'll see how very similar, different but similar to this ayah, ayat al-Sajdah. So it starts with Alif Lam Ra. Those are the ayat of the wise book. Is it so surprising to people that we have revealed to a man from among them that he should warn people and give glad news to those who believe that they are on a sure footing with their Lord? Yet those who disbelieve say, this man is clearly a spellbinder. Here it was, they say he made it up, he fabricated it. And then we are told in ayah 3, truly your Rabb is God in Surah al-Sajdah, it was in ayah 4, we are told, ayah 3, we are told, your Rabb. In ayah 4, your Rabb is God. It carries on. Here, in the same ayah, we are told, truly, your Rabb is God. And that's why when I read, for instance, the Sajdah, although there was some sentence in between, my mind got from Rabb to God, because it's a pattern that I have already come across in the Quran before, like this, directly. So it's like someone was telling us, I think it was Alia, how but if you study neuroscience, or we had French actually neuro brain surgeons who told us that the brain, when we learn something new, there is something called neuroplasticity, that the neuron paths change to make it easier for us. So when we learn something in the beginning, each time we have to make an effort. And the more we act on that, the more after a while, we don't have to think about it. We say it becomes a meleka, like we do it without thinking after a while. And in the physical world, there is a trace for it, a sign for it, which is the neural path. And in the Quran, this repetition also, it's like it's a formation, and this formation impacts how we think, how we reason, how we perceive the world. So here, your Rabb is God, who has created the heavens and the earth in 6 aeons. This is the third time. The other ayah also had in 6 aeons. It's repeated many times in the Quran. And it is established on the throne. So far, it's the same, right? Governing the affair. Yudabbiru al-amr. So in Surah al-Sajdah, these expressions are spread into three separate ayat. Here, they are all condensed in one ayah. And so you know that there is a direct link between these things. Rabb is God. Who is God? The one who has created the heavens and the earth in 6 aeons. And by doing so, he is established on the throne. How he is established on the throne? He governs the affair. And here, the governing the affair usually is going to be, it's translated as governing all that exists. Because of the context, it is clear that it is here referring to everything. He governs everything. There is none that could intercede with him except with his permission. It means, because we say, no, but like water, it gives life, it makes things grow. He says, no, it cannot do it without his permission, without his command. And this is very important. It's important to understand this, but it's important for our own iman, because if my immediate, let's say natural, I can't find a better word, relationship, my perception, my immediate perception of water is that it seems to me that it's acting somehow on its own, that somehow it is satisfying my thirst, that somehow it is feeding me, it's feeding my plants and growing them, then I no need to panic, but it means stop and go back. I am not aware that he is the one who governs the affair. He is the one who governs everything. I have not yet confirmed, therefore I have not testified, I have not made the shahada that the tadbir is his. Therefore, the throne doesn't seem to be his. And especially when we are told that his throne is on water, because think of water, it enters absolutely everything, living, all kinds of living things, all kinds of insects, birds, mammals, everything, and plants, and even inanimate things. You can pour it on earth and everything, and water never says, oh, this is a new anatomy, this is a new atomic structure, what am I going to do here? It acts everywhere perfectly without any mistake. I mean, even if you take the brightest people, you have like a expert team, they would never be able to do that, because not only they would have to know everything, but they will have to act. So it's a matter of knowledge and power. And subhanallah, Allah made it so easy for us. Water is so transparent because it has no knowledge, it has no power, and it has no life, and it is used in the giving of life. So clearly, nothing could intercede or do anything without his permission. Everything acts under his command. Thus is God your Rabb, therefore worship only him. Will you not then remember? So this is ayah 3 of Surah Yunus, Surah 10. And it carries on in, I'll carry on until 6, because it gives us a nice image. We can check, are we understanding correctly, or are we going off the way? So in ayah 4, we're told, your return, all of you, is to him. That is a true promise from God. He creates in the first instance, and he brings him, meaning human being, forth anew, so that he may justly reward those who believe and do good deeds, and those who disbelieve have a drink of scalding water and agonizing torment, because they persistently denied the truth. Persistently, every day we are given a new opportunity to testify to the truth, but if we don't, then we are denying. And remember, there is no neutral position. When we are not testifying that the throne belongs to God alone, that the tadbir is his only, then if we are not testifying to that, it means without realizing, but that's the nature of shirk, is that it is done in a state of ghafla, in a state of mindlessness. So mindlessly, without realizing, we are associating powers with God. We are giving some power to water, to things around us, without even realizing. Astaghfirullah. Ayah 5, we're told, it is he who has made the sun a shining radiance and the moon a light, determining phases for it, so that you might know the number of years and how to calculate time. This is important. I wanted to share it because remember, ayah 5 that we are sharing today, it starts with he governs the affair from heaven unto earth. Then it ascends unto him in a day whose measure is as 1,000 years of your reckoning. And here it's telling us that the sun and the moon are created in a way so that you, with order, with determined order and phases, so that you may know the number of years and how to calculate time. You know how a year is, at least for us in our solar system, is when the earth is revolving around the sun. So their positioning and everything is important. The position, how far it is, and the speed is important. So it is what we call a year is relative to the position of the earth towards the sun and the speed with which it revolves around it. And he says, and that's how we taught you to calculate time. God did not create all this without a true purpose. He explains his signs, his ayat, to those who know. Truly, in the succession of night and day, and in what God created in the heavens and earth, there are truly, again, it's emphasized so much, for those who are aware of him. And this expression, yudabbiru al-amr, which is he governs the affair, he controls everything, he plans and regulates everything, appears twice in this surah, in ayah 3, and then later in ayah 31. And in ayah 31, I want to share it because I think it's relevant to us, because it says something very explicitly. In ayah 31 of Surah 10, we're told, say, who provides for you, from the sky and the earth? And who owns your hearing and sight? And in ayah 8 and 9, we are going to be told that he is the one who gives us hearing and sight. So here we are asked, who is the one who provides you from earth and the sky? Because the earth won't grow food if there was no water coming from the sky. Water and other things as well. Now we know it's not only water. And who owns hearing and sight? Who brings forth the living from the dead and brings forth the dead from the living? And who governs? Here it's وَمَنْ يُدَبِّرُ الْأَمْرِ. Who governs the affair? Who governs all that exists? They will say, God. And then the answer is, then say, will you not remain conscious of him? Since it is God who gives everything to you. He gives you your sustenance. He gives you your hearing and sight. He gives you life, because he's the one who gives life to dead and brings the dead out of the life. So your life is from him. Anything else, what meaning does it have without life? All our plans and for the future and everything, if we are not alive, they are all meaningless. Yet we forget about the most important thing, which is these questions. And we do say, God, this is speaking to us. But then we are told, then why won't you? فَقُلْ أَفَلَا تَتَّقُونَ. Why won't you remain conscious of him then? The question here that attracted my attention also was, وَمَنْ يُدَبِّرُ الْأَمْرِ. Who is it that governs and regulates everything? So it is an explicit question. Of course, when we are told God governs everything, we are supposed to confirm that ayah too, right? Where we are supposed to not just read it and say, okay, God said so, it's in the Quran, therefore it's correct. Yeah, it's good. It's better than someone who, without reflecting on its meaning, just dismisses it. But it is not enough. Now that we didn't reject it, we need to confirm it. And in order to confirm it, we have to go out in the world and observe it and consider it and reflect and come back and say, yes, indeed, this is true. Sadaqallahu al-Azim, I confirm what God says. It is the truth because I witnessed it. I testify that he is the one who governs all that exists. Here, it's more explicit. It's asking, who is it that? And I thought we could make it our assignment for this coming week until next week, inshallah, and just keep in mind who governs all that exists. And one clue, of course, that we got from before is we first need to perceive the process of regulating. I don't want to say regulation, because in English, when you say regulation, it could be a process that ended, but in Arabic, it's an ongoing process when you say tadbir. So it's a regulating, planning, governing, administrating that's going on in the world here and now. Otherwise, how would we be able to testify it? And how would we be able to be alive anyway? Here it says, who is providing you with your nourishment, with your food from the heavens and from the sky and the earth right now, right? So we need to start from there, inshallah. And also, when I read وَمَنْ يُدَبِّرُ الْأَمْرِ, actually before this, what came to my mind was in Surah Al-Ra'd. If you remember, I don't remember when we did it, but we did study Surah Al-Ra'd together, and it's Surah 13. And in the very beginning of Surah Al-Ra'd, that I was not aware that it was in the beginning. I forgot, but I said, oh, this reminds me of Surah Al-Ra'd. But then I went and checked, and it was in the beginning. So Surah Al-Ra'd starts, again, you will see the similarities. And so all these similarities, put them together, different, it's like getting a picture of the same thing, but from different perspectives. And when you get all those pictures together, then you get an idea of what that reality, that truth that this is pointing to, it starts making more sense. Because remember, this is not describing a reality, it is pointing to it, because this reality is beyond word. Even our experience of it in the world is a sign to it, because we're talking about the divine here. So in Surah Al-Ra'd, Surah 13, Ayah 1, we're told Alif Lam Mim Ra. Remember, it was Alif Lam Mim, the other one was Alif Lam Ra, and this is Alif Lam Mim Ra. Those are the ayat of the book, and your Rabb has sent down to you, what your Rabb has sent down to you is the truth, yet most people do not believe. Remember, in Surah al-Sajdah, it says, they say he fabricated it. In the other one, they say it's sorcery, it's sihr. Here, it says most people do not believe. Now, in Surah Al-Ra'd, it applies to most people. Because we think we didn't say magic, we didn't say it is a fabrication. We believe it is the truth from God. Yes, but if I never taken any step to confirm that it is indeed from God, then how can I claim that it is indeed from God? And if someone from outside comes and look at how I live, they will say, it doesn't look like you believe that, because it's not you're not living as though you are meeting your Rabb tomorrow. So here you can see how there is a link. What I thought was about those people who deny I am not, this is important, I am not saying it is fabricated. I am not saying it is sorcery. I'm not at that level. But there is, if God is speaking about those people to me, it means from one perspective at least, from some perspective, from some aspect of that denial has something to teach me, has something that looks to my life, at least to some degree, even if it is not fully, even if it is just a tiny bit, because there is always room for betterment, for more iman, more confirmation. If you see what I want. And how do we know that that is talking to me? Not only because God is not speaking to them, but to me. So why is he speaking about them to me? He's teaching me something. And when I read in Surah Al-Ra'd this ayah, I say, oh yes, now it makes sense. There was something in the other ayat as well that looked to me. And I only benefit from those messages to the extent that I read them as a healing and guidance for me. They are not there. We're not reading the Quran to say, oh, those bad people who do this and that. Why would we gossip about the others? We want to heal ourselves. In ayah 2, we're told God who has raised up the heavens without any support that you can see, and then he is established on the throne. Can you see? Again, the Rabb and your Rabb has sent down and then your Rabb is God who has raised the heavens, something in the creation, describing who God is, and then he is established on the throne, and he has made the sun and the moon subservient to his laws and running its course for a term set by him. He governs the affairs. Can you see how Rabb is God? God is the one who creates. In his creation, he established his throne. How? Because he governs the affairs of everything. He governs all that exists. This pattern you will find in many, many surahs. And after a while, that sets a certain way of reasoning. It's like an equation, mashallah. I mean, I love when things are having like patterns that I can reproduce, that is clear reasoning, and then you can apply in everything. Look at the creation. It's a dynamic changes, and you will see the throne. How? Because there is tadbir. Look at that tadbir. And this is a way to read the ayat. This is a way, when I see the tadbir, it's from one perspective, because the ayat have different aspects. One of them is the tadbir, because they reflect, they display tadbir. They become like mirrors reflecting the name. Mudabbir is the name of God, for instance. And an example of tadbir would be, for instance, gravity. Since it's talking about here it's in Surah Al-Ra'd, for instance, it's talking about he's created everything without any support that you can see. Look at space. I mean, all these huge stars, and the sun is just one small star, and all these things. And on Earth as well. And they don't have supports in the way we built our buildings. So I thought of gravity, for instance. So gravity is a name. It's the name given to the amazing creation with tadbir. It is an ayah, it's a sign to this tadbir, to this all-encompassing rububiyyah. And the so-called law of gravity, and I'm saying so-called because it's called, it's a name, it's a label. An event is happening in the world, and we label it in order to be able to recognize it and talk about it. So as a tool, it is useful. And it states that bodies with greater mass attract other bodies with smaller mass. And in classical physics, it is known as the force that attracts a body towards the center of the earth or towards any other physical body. And that's why we are told the earth revolves around the sun, for instance. So we actually, what is important here is we do not absorb, we do not observe any force out there. We only observe bodies falling towards the earth according to a certain order. There is a certain order. There is a constant of gravity, and it's always the same ratio. So and the rest is interpretation. That is a measurement. We measure each time the speed of falling is orderly. It follows a certain order, and there is always, the ratio is always a constant that is, again, has a name, the constant of the gravity constant. And it is true that something is going on and it's occurring regularly and in a planned and purposeful way. That's the third tadbir. It's planned. Clearly, it's not happening haphazardly. When you throw an object, it falls in a particular way. You can measure it. That's tadbir. Then we call that regularity, we call it gravity or the law of gravitation or whatever. And so the law is the name describing that particular process. It is a statement of fact. It is deduced from the observation. It describes the way that phenomenon of falling, whatever the reason is, occurs. So it is the name we give to an observed regular process. Being a name, that law is not the maker. It is not making things fall. It is not the so-called force of gravity. It is an indication to order, to tadbir. It is a sign to an orderer, a mudabbir. Because you can say there is a force, okay, because we don't see a force. Even if we say there is a force, the force itself is also a sign to someone, because the matter cannot calculate, I'm going to pull this much, because if I pull too much, then imagine, like for human beings, we'll be stuck to earth, we won't be able to move. And if it doesn't pull us enough, according to this in the interpretation, we'll be floating like on the moon. And then we won't be able to have a life as we have now. So how come? Something very important is going on. There is lots of rahmah in this. There is rububiyyah in this. And usually when we just call it the law of gravity, and then we miss the whole tadbir that is going on there. And actually, in general relativity theory, gravity is interpreted differently. And it can be interpreted in different ways anyways. And so in general relativity theory, it's not a pulling force, but it's a curvature of space-time. It's that curve that produces that effect. So whether we believe it's a force pulling things or a result of the curvature of space-time, whatever the interpretation, because it's not something we find out there, it's a model for making sense of what's going on. For calculation purposes, it may be okay, as long as it does not become a veil on what's going on in reality, in fact, out there. So the important thing is, how is this being realized? What is pulling things in such a well-measured, well-calculated, orderly way? Does matter, like matter is something blind, doesn't have power, doesn't have knowledge, doesn't have consciousness, nothing. Is it calculating how much force to exert when pulling our bodies, for instance, so that it's not too big, so we're not stuck on earth and we can't move, or it's not too little, so we can't stand? Clearly, it doesn't make sense. When we start asking questions, as we are taught in the Quran, it's clear that matter is not doing it. It is happening. It is done onto it. So one thing is clear, and that's that all motions, all those motions are taking place in an extremely well-ordered, well-measured manner. Nothing is being haphazard, and there is purpose. And as we are told in the Quran, مَتَاعًا لَكُمْ وَلِأَنْعَامِكُمْ. It is to benefit you and your animals. It is done in a way that sustains life and facilitates life. It serves life. It can't be done for something blind and unconscious can't have planned that, because planning is also part of tadbir. So this meticulous, this awesome order, this tadbir indicates a source of knowledge, a source of power, a source of wisdom, a source of compassion. And it indicates al-mudabbir, who regulates everything perfectly. Does it make sense so far? I just wanted to give an example of tadbir, since I said let's make it our assignment. Shall I carry on?
Is there anyone? I think this is a nice moment to pause. Anyone who would like to ask a question? If you have difficulty unmuting yourself, let me know. I can unmute you. So our homework this week is to pay attention to how things are being governed.
Yeah, and to find the tadbir in whatever attracts our attention. The intent, once you set your intention, you never know what Allah will put on your way. Mm-hmm. And then share it, inshallah.
What was the name, the name, Allah's name that corresponds with the tadbir? Mudabbir, you said, or?
Yes.
Mudabbir. Thanks.
And do you have any tips on how to notice that? Shall we pay attention to things across the world that seem to be under the same kind of principle or
order?
Is reflecting on so-called laws of nature, would that be helpful?
I think let's everyone experience it for a week so that people can come with their own questions. Mm-hmm. Does it make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we can say lots of things, but it remains as information, and as long as we don't apply it, it's like someone gives me lots of how do you say, for instance, what could it be, recipes, meal recipes, but I'm not into cooking, so I don't cook it, and I don't know what really. I know it's about food. I know maybe I tasted one or two at that friend's place, but the rest of it will be just recipes for me, and that's it. It's food, and I don't know what really she's talking about.
Yeah, I understand. You don't want it to become something that we memorize and force out.
Like a collection of information, and it can be misleading sometimes if we focus too much on information. And if I start mistaking my information for iman, then it can even lead to like being like, I know everything. I know the tadbir, I know this. Like, if you knew, you wouldn't talk about it that way.
What I was thinking was more of like just highlighting some clues. Let's say
I gave some clues. That's why I shared the example, and I said in the beginning when I said let's have an assignment, I said the clue is to first, who governs everything? Look at the regulating, the planning, the governing, the order, the harmony, the patterns in creation.
Mhm. Thank you. Are there any comments, questions? Assignment clear, accepted? Inshallah. Inshallah, we will see this week. Observe it, inshallah.
So in ayah 30, in ayah 4, Surah 32, in ayah 4, if you remember, when we say a God who has created, so it's Allahu alladhi khalaqa, and then in ayah 5 it starts with yudabbiru al-amr. So we have 4 starts with khalq, khalaqa, and 5 starts with amr. And this, when we think amr, I think of amr means command. And if God is giving the command, because the tadbir is happening as a result of his command, that's what it says. The command reminds me of be and it is. And be is the amr, is the command part, and it is the result, and the result is the creation, it's the khalq. So khalaqa is the result of amr, of command. That's why it starts with telling us that God has created everything. He is established on the throne. The throne is his alone. And then it is explaining to us, how do I recognize that the throne is his alone? Because the tadbir is, you can see planning and order and regulation everywhere. And that is the result. And so the next step would be, that's not in the assignment, but the next step, when the more we perceive the tadbir in the world, the more we will realize that it's all pointing to a command. Someone is administrating everything. Someone is making the decision, let's say, if I may say. So in the Quran, we're told, be, and it is. So the it is, being, the world of being, the world of creation, everything we experience in the world is the result of be, is the result of the divine command be. So khalq is the result of amr. That's why ayah 4 starts with khalq, ayah 5 starts with amr. And so the realm of creation is dependent on the realm of command. Khalq is dependent on amr. Khalq is the result of amr. It is the result of be. God, unless God says be, there is no it is. Does it make sense?
Yes. Before you go on further, I wanted to ask you about the. You mentioned the pattern, that there's a pattern that we notice in different surahs, that it talks about, it's who he created heavens and the earth in 6 days, 6 stages, and established himself on the throne, and then Yudabbir al-Amr governs all that exists. What do you think about looking at this as part of a larger metaphor of the creator as the king, and symbolically, then I'm thinking, of course, the metaphor, but the king first kind of establishes the country, and then puts things order, and then sits on the throne. I mean, he assumes the leadership as the king, and then he's the king, so he continues to govern. So he establishes, and then sits on the throne. I mean, he makes things in stages, puts the thing together, and then sits on the throne and governs. So is this a helpful metaphor? Because, you know, the Quran encourages this kind of metaphor to.
So why do you? Why did you want to think of it this way? Like, is it making something easy for you to understand, or because there's no Malik here?
But there is the throne.
But in Arabic, it is an expression that means the rule and control is yours.
And then it starts with stages, right? Creates in stages.
Yes.
His throne and his governance. So the governing emphasizes the continuation.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we can't think of it in literal sense, because that would imply that God first did things and then he's just kind of editing the things or arranging things a little bit. But you know, we don't want to. That wouldn't make sense. You know, when I was saying that sometimes people think about God like as if he's like a athlete, those athletes who lift weights. So when the athlete, you know, holds on to the bar and is about to lift the weight, he gives a big push, and then once he gets it up, he's still holding it, but he doesn't need as much, you know, the lifting, the first lifting is harder, and the continuing to lift is a bit easier. So this person was saying that, you know, sometimes people think about God in continuously creating as if, no, you know, like this athlete, whereas in reality, it can't be that way. In reality, the beginning and the continuation is constantly.
I see what you have in mind. We did talk a little bit about it last week. I think now I remember that you did mention something similar. Okay, I'll keep this in mind when I am talking about the comment.
Yeah, maybe it's more of a question. Is there a kind of a stage here? Because we mentioned that there was a pattern, almost the reasoning there. So, you know, 6 days stage, and then
the first
establishing, and yeah.
Okay, I'll get back to it, inshallah. Okay, if I got really what you are saying, otherwise you'll remind me, inshallah. So here, the important thing in the beginning to know, but inshallah, eventually we will experience it, and is that the realm of creation is dependent on the realm of command. For me, it took many years of reflection, and in the beginning, it was each time, although intellectually it made sense, in real life, it was amazing me each time. Why? Because somehow there is this illusion when we are stuck in ghafla, there is this illusion that the real world is the creation, is the more solid, the more real, it seems. So how can the word, a word, be is a word, is a command, be more fundamental than something that is solid like matter? But actually, the creation with the most solid matter is dependent on what we think is less solid. But it takes time, but we get used to it. Like I'm sitting now in a house. This house is a building. It's a solid physical building, but this physical building was first, before it was a physical building, it was a blueprint. And before it was a blueprint, it was an idea in someone's mind and someone's imagination. Someone imagined it, then willed to have it built, and then make the decision. And as a result of the decision, this house is here. So in terms of reality, it is not more real than the other, than the blueprint, for instance. The blueprint can be used to make another house, but the house, that's it. It's here sitting. It doesn't do anything. It is done. So this is just the tip of the iceberg, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what's going on here. And that's why whenever the kun fayakun, the be and it is the famous kun fayakun. So the kun be fayakun and it is usually mentioned after creation. Creation, and then creation is explained with kun fayakun, with the command. So in Surah Yasin, we are the one we are the most familiar with is إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا يقول له كن فيكون, in Surah Yasin. So Surah Yasin is 36. In Ayah 81, before the kun fayakun, we are told it is He who has created the heavens and the earth. Is He who has created the heavens and the earth not able to create the likes thereof? Yes, indeed, He is the all-knowing creator. Actually, the word creator here in Arabic is وَهُوَ الْخَلَّاقُ الْعَلِيمُ. He is the one who is constantly creating from our perspective. So he's not only khaliq, he's khallaq as well. And then we are told his command, his amr, when he wills a thing, is only to say be and it is. So be and it is explains the act of creation. The act of creation of the part of God is a command. The gist, the essence, the origin of the creation, what sustains it, what brings it into being and sustains it is a command. It is a amr. In Surah Al-Ghafir, Surah 40, again, I will start from the BNTs is in 68. I'll start in 67 so that you see the context each time. So in Ayah 67, we're told, it is He, it is God, who has created you from dust, then from a drop of fluid, then from a tiny clinging form, then He brought you forth as infants, then He allowed you to reach maturity, then He let you grow old, though some of you die sooner, and reach your appointed term so that you may reflect. It is He who gives life and death, and when He decrees a thing, He says only be, and it is. And we talked a little bit about it last week. And it's about, you see in 67, it's talking about the creation in stages. So it looks like we look at the creation, at the khalq, and we see stages. We see a seed, then a shoot, then a tree, then a flowering tree, then a tree full of fruits. We see here a drop of fluid, a cell, then an embryo, then a baby, a toddler, a full-grown human being. But in the second ayah, the next ayah, it says, He is the one who gives life and death. And when he decrees a thing, He says, be, and it is. So superficially, especially when we are in ghafla, when we have not learned to reflect as we are taught in the Quran, it looks like somehow the shoot is coming from the seed, the tree from the shoot, and vice versa, and so on. And so we don't affirm it, but it seems to us, because we have not thought it carefully, because of our mindlessness, it seems like one is coming out of the other. Therefore, it seems like the seed somehow is contributing to the shoot contributing to the tree. Here it's saying, no. He says, be, and it is. Each one is a new creation. You can think of it as one simple example that comes to my mind as the old films when it was not digital, when you had a rolled film, and you have on each film, you have, if it's a video, for instance, you have different pictures. When you are watching on the screen, it seems like a person is moving. It seems like the shoot, the seed, then the shoot, then the tree. But actually, when you look in the film, each one is a separate square. They are just coming one after the other. Just because one is coming after the other in time it means in sequence of creation, that's what time is, does not mean that one is making the others. They cannot make each other. Each one is being created. And how can it make something when it is itself dying and leaving? When it's itself in need of being sustained, as we are told in separate other parts of the Quran. Each one is the result of being. And I think last week I gave the example of the body of a baby. The proportion of the body of a baby is different than a toddler, different than a child, different than an adult. So it's not like when we built in stages, I can build my house and then I decide to have an extension. I just go and get some bricks and some mortar and add a room or two. That's not how the creation is happening. The 1-year-old baby is not 6-month-old or 9-month-old with some cells added to it. It's a whole different shape, different everything. The whole body is new. And even the proportions, everything is new. Even as an adult, let's say the proportions, nothing changed. In few months, all our cells are renewed. And actually, those cells, as cells, looks to us that they are renewed in few months. They are made of molecules and atoms. And the atoms are continuously, constantly being renewed at a very fast time, some of them even. Very, very, like in a we can't talk about seconds. It's a nano time. It's another realm of time. And so everything is being sustained right here and now and being renewed in the sense that it's a new creation. It's not the old me being added something or being kept in life. No, it is a new be, a new it is. But because they are coming from the same command, whoever willed me to be this way now wills me to be that way in a very similar way afterwards. Actually, with human beings, when you see the newborn after 10 years, it's nothing to do. Barely. Sometimes even the colors and everything change. You can't recognize the person anymore. But when we do not reflect on it, it seems like it is happening in stages, and so we can get stuck in the stages. That's why each time it is mentioning the creation in stages, and right after saying the throne is his, the tadbir is his, or here be and it is, he creates with the command. And in the other one it says yudabbirul amr. He is the one who makes the decisions. He is the one who gives the commands. For us, it's each time. For God, it's be, and that's it. I mean, there's no time on the other side. We don't know. We can only talk about it, how we perceive it, how we observe it. So it is important that, observing and perceiving the creation in stages is the first step. And that's why we need to find something that is unifying those stages, which is the tadbir, the regulation, the planning. And if there is ordering and planning and regulating, then all those stages are proceeding from one command. That's what matters. And then we realize we are not stuck in the stages anymore, because when we're stuck in the stages, it's very easy to go to shirk. It's very easy to attribute things to the things themselves, to the process itself. So we have Amr, be, and everything else proceeds from it, and then it is. That's the world of being. And the carriers of the divine commands are the angels. For instance, Jibril alayhi salam, peace be upon him, carries revelation. So God gives the command, it comes to human beings through the angels. It manifests in the creation through the angels. So on one hand, we have the world of the seen. On the other hand, once we learn to reflect and see behind or beyond, then we start recognizing that the world of the seen is pointing, indicating, it is an ayah to the world of the unseen, as we are told in ayah 6, that he's the one who knows the seen and the unseen. So on one hand, we have the world of creation, or you can call it nature. On the other hand, we have revelation that comes to us either through revelation, God revealing himself to us, making himself known to us through the Quran and through the creation, through the revealed words of the Quran or through his creating. And in both cases, we are told in the Quran, they are ayat, they are signs proceeding from his command. The it is being is the result of be, and so is the Quran also from him. And therefore, they are ayat to his command, and therefore, actually, we don't see first the command. We see them as ayat to his tadbir first. And then we conclude that the tadbir points to his command. We first actually see the throne, then the tadbir, the throne, the command. And in the Quran, we are told, أَلَا لَهُ الْخَلْقُ وَالْأَمْرُ. Truly, to him belongs all creation and all commands, all decisions. And the result of the decisions, that the traces, let's say, of athar, of amr, that we first see is the tadbir. That's why tadbir is important. Seeing that there is the not being stuck in the stages as though they were static, each one of them. No, it's a dynamic process of creating. One is not making the other. They are all coming from one, and they are all pointing, speaking, testifying to that one. So in Surah Al-A'raf, Surah 7, Ayah 54, we are told, truly your Rabb, meaning your sustainer, is God. Again, this is repeated again and again. Your sustainer is God, who has created the heavens and the earth in 6 aeons. This is the 4th time now. 4th time, 4th different passage in the Quran. So God, truly your Rabb, is God, who has created the heavens and the earth in 6 aeons and is established on the throne of his almightiness. He covers the day with the night in swift pursuit, with the sun and the moon and the stars subservient to his command. Musakharatun bi amrihi. They are all at your service with his command. They are subservient to his command. Truly, his is all, to him belongs all creation and all command. All the creation that you first see, and then we need to learn to reflect, to find, to be able to see the throne of God, the tadbir, and the tadbir directly indicates the divine command. Hallowed is God, the sustainer of all the world. ألا له الخلق والأمر تبارك الله رب العالمين. So there are two realms, the realm of khalq, of creation, and the realm of command, that where everything proceeds from, amr. And these two realms of command and creation, they are combined into us, in human beings, and that's why we can talk about them, and that's why we are created in this way, so to match the creation, so that we can find our Rabb through his creation, his way of commanding and creating. From his perspective is command, create. From our perspective is create, command. That's why considering the creation is so important. Reflecting on the creation is so important. ما خلقت هذا باطلا. You have not created anything in vain or without meaning and purpose. So on one side we have a ruh, and we have a physical body, and the ruh, the spirit, is from amri rabbi, from the God's command. وَيَسْأَلُوكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. And they ask you, this is an ayah of the Quran, it's ayah 85 of Surah al-Isra, Surah 17, the night journey. It says, they ask you about the ruh, the spirit. Say, the spirit is from my sustainer, from my Rabb's command, his amr. So we have something in us that is breathed. In ayah 9 of this surah, we will be told about the creation of human being as an example. And it says, we breathed in of our ruh into you. So, and here it's saying the ruh is from his command. So it's coming from the command directly, and that's how we can recognize that what is happening in the world is coming also from the command. In Surah Al-Ghafir, which is Surah 40, in ayah 15, we are told the raiser of degrees, the possessor of the throne. The throne is always coming. All these concepts are interconnected in beautiful ways. It's like they are weaving. You think they are being just woven like that, but at the end you start seeing the beautiful tapestry coming out. The raiser of degrees. God is the raiser of degrees, the possessor of the throne. He casts the spirit from his command, from his amr, upon whom he wills of his servant to warn of the day of the meeting. So the command, what is important in this ayah 35 is that we 4 and 5, 32, 4 and 32, 5. So ayah 4 and 5 is, and also before we had tanzil of the kitab, the Quran is also being descending from God. So we have the command descends from God, and then we have the results or the implications. Actually in the ayah it says it, so we'll find out what that it is. The results of his command ascend to him. The command is coming down and it reflects, it manifests in the world as creation. And then something from that creation goes back to him. It ascends to him in a day that is the equivalent of 1,000 years in your reckoning, it says. So let's, I can only share some reflections to make something a little like a little more what's going on here. And of course, what I am sharing does not exhaust the meaning of this ayah. And actually this ayah is one of the ayah that had a great impact on me when I was a student. The first time I decided to read the Quran from beginning to end with the intention to study it. I was still a student. And I remember being stopping at this ayah and wondering what it meant. And I don't remember what I understood that time. So let's look at the descent. The Amr is coming from God. The command is coming from God. The be, with which everything finds being. We have the Ruh, as far as we're concerned, we have the Ruh, the spirit in us, is breathed onto us. Right now, when the spirit is not breathed anymore, that's it. We depart from this world. When it is not breathed into this body, it ceases to exist in this world. So it's being breathed into us, as we are told in ayah 9 of this surah and elsewhere in the Quran many times. And our body, our physical body, is being sustained here and now, always. It's being sustained through air, through breathing, through many things. And so when we look casually, or we see the result, or when we look casually or superficially or the first time, we see the result of creation. We see the result of khalq. We have no clue. We are not yet aware of amr or command. We don't see command around us. We see creation. And actually, if we are in a state of ghafla, as I just shared, we may, I am making this now because Isra, inshallah, is answering your question. If we are still in a state of ghafla, or when we are in a state of ghafla, because we can go in and out, we imagine that the process of coming into being, something is born, like a baby is born, like, because let's stick with the baby maybe, because that's what the surah is going to talk about. We imagine that the process of coming into being is somehow as if it's the creator itself. It seems, at least to the superficial mind, that, for instance, as I said before, it's the seed plus water, earth, soil, whatever, air, sunlight equals tree. That's it. Nothing else. We don't need a command. We don't need a giving of life, a breathing of something into it. Breathing of the ruh into us. In a tree, it needs a command. Otherwise, where is life coming from? We don't think about that part when we are looking at things superficially in a state of ghafla, when we have not yet learned to reflect. As small kids, they recognize something because the ruh recognizes something there. And I remember a small kid saying, "Oh, it's magical." He left like the seed, and the next day it was growing, and he was like just 2 or something, barely speaking, and he was taking it to everyone, the pot, and saying, "Look, it's magic, look, it's magic," whatever he learned that word. Not a Muslim family though. But you can see that the fitra, there is a ruh in there that recognizes that there is something. He was at awe, something unusual, something great, something is happening here. But then we get used to it and we say, "Oh yes," we give it a name and we say, "Yes, of course. It's a seed, it grows into this and that." We name it, label it, and no awe anymore. Or maybe if there is like a new flower or something, we appreciate it a little bit, but we don't stay enough there. We don't let that awe, that appreciation, we don't absorb it and stay with it and listen to it. So we don't get the message. We say, oh, yeah, as if I know, and just pass by, as we are told in the Quran. When they see the signs of God, ayatullah, they just pass by as if, okay, nice. But when we start learning from the Quran, having this tarbiyah imaniya, this imani reflecting in order to know God, to establish our faith on evidences, then we start thinking, how about life? How about the shapes? How about the colors? How about the scents? Something is going there, something amazing is going in a small pot in that flower. Every day, it's a new creation, as we are told in the Quran. And then you start realizing that each stage, how about each stage? Isn't each stage unique? Like each snowflake is unique, like the human face, subhanallah. Each, well, we can say, oh yeah, it's a baby is born or something, but yeah, but every human being, all human beings look similar. We recognize them as human beings. That's how we recognize the oneness of where they are coming from. Yet at the same time, each one is unique. So we recognize also that it's not a factory. Each one is the result of be, and it is. Each one has a special ruh assigned to him that is coming directly from God's command. So as we learn to reflect, as in the way we're taught in the Quran, we start to look more carefully. We start to realize that although beings seem to unfold into stages, each stage is in fact a new creation. Each stage is the result of a command of be, and that's how it is. And the it is in such a way that it points to a command special for that being because of its uniqueness. And so for this reflection to happen, we need to pause more often. We need to slow down with the intention to reflect, to be more focused. We need to intend to reflect with the intention to find out who is behind all this, who is sustaining me with this breathing. I say I'm breathing, but actually I know that I'm not doing the breathing. If I pause and reflect and understand that I am not the one doing it actively, I am receiving it. It is done unto me. And I'm not doing the seeing, it is done unto me. So we start then noticing when we slow down, when we pause, when we start reflecting, as we are taught in the Quran, with that intention to find who my Rabb is, who is my sustainer right here and now, then we start noticing the realm of malakut, the realm, the aspect of things that look to God, that look to the beautiful names of God, that look to his throne, the aspect of creation that look to the command, like the khalq that looks to amr. Actually, we will see that we say it's called malakut because It is the angels that carry the amr from God to our world. They are like the prism through which the white light comes, and then we have all the colors. So that's why it's called al-Malakut, because it is the realm or the world of angels, and the angels are carrying the command of God, the divine command, the Amr. And eventually we realize that everything is acting at the command of their Rabb, as I was saying with water. Clearly, it can't be entering everywhere and acting itself. It is clearly, the more we look at it, the more we see that it has no power, no consciousness, no knowledge, no purpose, nothing. Yet it is employed in it goes in and work everywhere perfectly. Then we conclude, we deduce that it is being employed. It is acting at the command of someone who knows everything, someone who has power over everything, someone who controls everything, someone who regulates everything, someone who has mercy and compassion over everything, someone who purposely is nourishing and sustaining everything. That's how we see from water. We follow water as it enters everywhere, and we don't have to go to the lab, just as we are using it in our daily life. And we conclude that this water, it is acting at the command of someone who knows everything. That command leads us to the giver of the command, the Rabb, together with his beautiful names, with his attributes. Otherwise, for instance, if you take an embryo, you have cells growing. How does each cell know which position to take? Some will go to the eye, some will go to the brain, and when it goes to the brain, it takes a different composure and texture and structure and everything. The one, even in the eye, the one inside, the one outside on the cornea, it's going to be transparent because we need to see through. How does it know? Clearly, it is acting at the command of someone. It is only taking position as it is commanded. It does not know. Clearly, it does not know. Yet, the task it is achieving, it exhibits and displays tremendous knowledge of the whole body, not only the body, but also the light that is going to go through my eye and everything. What am I going to see and everything? So only one who knows me and what I'm going to look at and the sunlight and everything else can be the one who is commanding that cell to be there in that way at that moment, and sustaining it and sustaining me with it. So in the beginning, that's how it looks. And the more we reflect on the be and it is, the more we will find that it is like concentric circles, be and it is within be and it is. In the beginning, it seems like one is doing the other, it's doing the command. Afterwards, we will realize that everything is the result of his creating right now. But that's a process of reflecting. And then the first step is to realize that these things, like for instance, the water molecule, as I said, that works without confusion, wherever it goes, in all living beings, in all inanimate things, subhanallah, then we realize that the water molecules are the recipient of the divine command, be And as such, they are like mirror to the divine attributes, because there is display of knowledge, of power, of all kinds of different attributes. This is where the ascent is going to start. So that this was the descent. I am witnessing the descent of the command. I look at the creation and go back and find that this creation is the result of a command that descended here. Does it make sense? Yes.
Could you repeat the last sentence again, please?
Which sentence?
This, you said this is the descent, okay?
The descent is God says, be, and it is. From my perspective, I see that it is. I see the world of creation, and I reflect in the way that I shared now until I realize that this is the result of a command be. And therefore, I can confirm that yes, the divine command has descended in this world, and what I see is the result, the traces, the product, let's say, the creation of that command.
Mm-hmm.
It all proceeds from that command. And now I witnessed the descent. Now the ascent will begin. And at this stage, we start witnessing the tasbihat of beings around us, because when I realized that water is actually acting at the divine command, not itself, it cannot be acting like it. Then this way, then my interaction with it will be an interaction of ayah. I start perceiving it as what it truly is, as an ayah. Whereas in my ghafla, I used to perceive it as an independent being doing things. And that was reflecting my self-perception. When I'm not aware that I am being sustained right now, that I am a abd, that I am totally dependent on my Rabb's sustaining, that I cannot create anything, I cannot breathe myself, my life is not mine, my seeing is not mine, my sight, my hearing, everything is given to me not only when I was born, but right now, and it can be taken anytime, as we are told in the Quran. If it were taken, who would bring it back to you? No one, of course. And so when I start perceiving myself and acknowledging myself as who I am, totally dependent on my Rabb, it will be easier to perceive water as what it is. It is acting at the command of its Rabb. It is Arsh. It is manifesting his Arsh, not it is not appropriate. It's not saying that I am doing things. It's only me in my ghafla that in my illusion, I think that it is doing things. It never is saying that. Water itself is never said that to me. And the more I witness and testify and perceive water as it is, the more I come back and also start perceiving myself as who I truly are. So it is an ongoing cycle that gets better and better. So our interaction with beings will be that of ayat, which is what they truly are. And our awareness starts increasing, awareness of who we are. And the more our awareness of who we are, what they are, what the true nature of being is, the true nature of being is the result of the command be. It is not the fundament. It is the result of a command. then as that awareness increased, we begin to live more from the ruh, because it is the ruh that is created with that consciousness, with that awareness, with that mindfulness. And it is the ruh in us that recognizes the angelic aspect of creation, the malakut of creation. It is the ruh in us because it is the direct recipient of the divine command. It is min amri rabbi. Then it is innately being created with the knowledge of the divine names. It can recognize the divine names. It can recognize the divine command in the creation. So when we are not at that stage, it seems like, what are you talking about? When you get there, you will recognize it because it's already in us. We'll just uncover it. We'll just remember what has already been taught to us. And after we witness the descent of the command, we witness that whatever we are seeing is actually a command that has descended and materialized in, manifests itself in creation. Then we start participating in their tasbihat, because we witness that everything around us is glorifying God with the way they are. And we start our acknowledging them, our recognizing them is already a participation in their tasbihat. Our being at awe of how everything is acting at the command of God is a tasbihat through our way of being. And then we will also affirm it through words as well. And then we are ready to start the mi'raj. Remember, the word used in ayah 5 is ya'ruju ilayhi fi yawmin kana miqdaruhu alf sana. Everything ascends to it. And if you remember the hadith that says the Prophet ﷺ on the Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj, on the night journey, he ascended to the throne of God. And that was a miracle because he went there body and soul, but he also teaches us that it is we are supposed to seek to ascend through our ruh. And so as far as the journey of the ruh is concerned, the mi'raj, the ascension, has opened for us the path to ascend onto him. And for instance, we are told as-salatu mi'rajul mu'min. The prayer, the salat, is the ascension, is the mi'raj of the believers, because the higher our iman and our awareness, our ihsan, the more ihsan, remember, is to live in the presence of God all the time, or at least more often. In the prayer, it is the opportunity to remember and make the intention to stand in the presence of the divine. So we are in front of the throne of God. As much as we testified and witnessed and observed his throne in his creation, and we know him as the one who established himself on the throne. And that's our the mi'raj of the ruh. So the glorification, the tasbihat of all the creation ascend to God. This is told in many places, you understand from the Quran. How is it that? It's because remember that everything, the purpose of their creation is to be ayat, to glorify God and to make him known by glorifying him with praise, by testifying to his oneness. And this is why everything is created, including the human beings, to worship God. but the human being is the only one who has free will and may go out, may forget about worshiping God alone. So everything else never forgets worshiping God. So they are 24/7, non-stop, constantly, as we are told many times in the Quran, repeatedly, that everything glorifies God constantly. And it's like their glorification is, from one aspect, it is the purpose of their creation. So it's like the crops of the harvest. And that's why it goes back to God. And when we witness this, when we observe it and witness it and participate in it, inshallah, we get to know God through his creation. We get to testify, to make the shahada of Tawheed, La ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammad Rasulullah. And we start living from the Ruh and worshiping him and thanking him and glorifying him with praise. And this worship, this praise ascends to God. And so this all happens when we live, the more we live from the Ruh, the more the fruit of our life will ascend to God. Otherwise, they will go in vain if they are not connected to God, to the eternal. They will remain transient and they will be in vain, as we are told in the Quran, as dry plants, crops that a wind comes and scatters them around. Your deeds will be like that if there is no iman and it is not done mindfully in the name of God, glorifying God, worshiping God. So it's very important, because there is no neutral position in between. Either we live, whatever the life we live, it is multiplied by 0 and it goes nowhere, because there is no akhirah, there is no after, there is no true future. Or when we fulfill the purpose of our creation and fulfill the purpose of the creation of everything around us, from one perspective, they are created to help us in our journey towards God, in our ascension towards him, then all our life, or everything, will be transformed into worship, will increase our knowing God, will increase our ubudiyah, our ibadah, and therefore will all ascend to him. It will all be transformed into glorifying him, praising him. Subhanallah, alhamdulillah, mashallah, la ilaha illallah. And in Surah Al-Ma'arij, Surah 70, Ayah 4, we are told that the angels and the spirit, the Ruh, ascend onto him. So we ascend onto him with our Ruh, and everything, there is the equivalent of the Ruh in everything, which is that conscious-like thing. I mean, remember the famous hadith when we are told that the Prophet ﷺ said, we love Uhud and Uhud loves us. So for me, the first time I heard it, we love Uhud, okay, I can love, we imagine that I can love something, an inanimate thing, and we don't reflect about what it means. But he says, and Uhud loves us. Because if there is, like we have a physical body and we have a non-physical thing within us that makes us who we are. If there is a loving between me and the Uhud, the mountain, And we don't think about it, but sometimes if you lived in a place with the mountains, maybe I was born in a place by the sea, and I saw the sea very, very often. And the first time I moved away from the sea, I was like homesick. I was seasick. I was felt like the world was very small. Where's the water? Where is the sea? And water was not enough. It had to feel infinite. It had to feel like I couldn't see the other side. And it's only when there is separation that you realize that it had a meaning. And Imam Nursi says, for the ghafil, seas and mountains and things look like dead bodies. For those who are mindful, that they know that the sea is making tasbihat. So just like I have a body and a ruh, it has a body and an angelic side, an angel side. It is the angel that is receiving the command and sending back the glorification. And it is the angel side, the meaning side, the angel that is holding the beautiful names of God in that sea, in that ocean or whatever, that the ruh in me recognizes and loves, and vice versa. And that's why you understand, oh, it makes sense, of course, yes. Uhud, a mountain is not only rock, just like you are not only flesh and bones. There is something else there that's going on. It is making, but when you start making tasbihat mindfully, and you start making tasbihat together, as we are told in the Quran, the prophets who made tasbihat together with the mountains, with the birds, with this and that, then they become your friend in tasbih, your friend in worship. My friend in worship can't be an inanimate thing. Of course, I love them and they love me. And of course, that's why we're told in the Quran, when the disbelievers die, the heavens and the earth don't cry over them, which Imam Nursi says, therefore it means when the believers die, they do cry over them. They are saddened. They lost a friend, someone who used to be a companion in tasbihat, a companion in praising God, a companion in making shahada, a companion in ubudiyah and ibadah. And they are there to help us and remind us. So we start seeing and experiencing life in a different way. Interestingly, this ayah that says the angel and the spirit ascend unto him in a day whose length is 50,000 years. It is Surah al-Ma'arij. Ma'arij, Mi'raj is one, Ma'arij is the plural, the ways of ascent. Isn't that interesting? Subhanallah, I found it beautiful. And it says 50,000 years, and in our ayah, it is 10,000 years. And what matters here is that the notion of day, no, there it was, yeah, in a day, the notion of day is relative. Maybe we should stop here and carry on next week, inshallah. I was going to talk a little, not much, but a little more about time and how it is to do with the reflecting and the living from the ruh, and how the time for the ruh and the time when we are calculating it superficially, normally in life are different.
Yeah, maybe we stop here with this.
I think we'd better stop here and next, inshallah.
Yeah, so that we can appreciate it even
And you will see that time is related to this living from the Ruhi. There is an indication there, an ayah there pointing at something deep, something beautiful. So we'll stop here, inshallah. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. ربي أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه وادخلني برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين. آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Jazakumullah khair. Dr.
Thank you very much.
Yes, did you have a comment or a question?
I was just listening and learning, just trying to reflect what you say and use them. Maybe I can ask question later. Next session.
Inshallah, inshallah. And inshallah.
Yeah, it was very useful. Thank you very much for spending time and sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you. You are welcome. Alhamdulillah.
So we have it again next week?
Inshallah. Every week at the same time, inshallah.
Thank you. And if I miss a session, I just realized you record the session.
Yeah.
Can I ask if I couldn't attend one of them, can I ask that you send it to me? Is that possible?
Yes, actually there is a YouTube channel. If you type Receiving Nur YouTube channel, you will see
okay.
Everything gets uploaded there. You can also find the link to this in the newsletter. It says, click this.
Okay.
Receiving Nur YouTube.
Okay. Okay. I'll try to find both of them.
Problems you can email Receiving Nur, inshallah.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have you joined us? Inshallah. Next time we will explore more. Is there anybody else? Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question or offer a comment at this time? I know it's 10:05, but we can take just a couple of minutes. If there's anyone. Okay, if not, then we will stop here, and inshallah we'll continue next week. And in the meantime, we do have an assignment halfway through the session. That our assignment is to notice around us as much as we can the tadbir, the way, the fact that things are being governed and affairs are being directed and governed, to notice the tadbir of everything around us. Inshallah, we'll be able to notice this next week and share, inshallah, what we notice. So on that note, we stop here. Jazakumullah khair.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
And keep
us in your prayers.
Yes, and we should be with each other, inshallah. All right, then. Until we meet again, في أمان الله. Or Khuda Hafiz.